last week I attempted very casually to get to a longer set of foundation exercises. We'll see how far we get this. Softening the knees and hips, sinking down, getting the head back, crown up, in the back open, shoulders and hips sink, spread the hands and feet. Release the weight down, the breath begin to collect in the abdomen. Even when I'm time conscious, try not to rush this stage, and really the longer the better. Starting to find the posture as a unified feeling, not a collection of these little corrections, and eventually positioning the head, and altering the hips, and the weight just becomes one change. Start with the head, it sort of leads to all the others. I'll start my rocking. So I feel the feet spreading and pressing the floor a little bit as I sit back. Arches lift. Feel the whole sole of the foot grasping the floor. Start to relax and loosen the hips a little more. Even up through the low back. Maintain that quality of the back of the hips sinking down in particular, and the tailbone dropping under. Shift side to side. Circle. But really continuing my practice of the basic posture. Adding a little movement can both help us find that posture, but also challenge us. Maintain the posture without anything being stiff, holding anything tight. Pause and reverse. And then again, keeping that posture, but looking up, chin still a little back, and down. As I look up, open the whole front of the body. And down, open the back, sinking the weight. So the position of the hips stays stable. Right? We don't see from the outside any movement there. It doesn't mean we don't feel some subtle movement internally. We can feel some activation down through pelvis, hips, the legs, and even the feet. Feel that spreading, grasping of the floor again, but without the weight shift. Arms opening and rounding. Side bending. Crown rising up, the weight sinking down and stabilizing the lower body. Allowing for a little movement. Internal changes. Circle, same idea. Crown stays light. So if the head is floating up away from the body the whole time, lower body feels nice and grounded. Reverse. Maybe we'll change the order a little bit. We'll move into the shoulders. Going forward and back. Especially when we come back, pulling the shoulders gently down toward the middle of the back. Activating those lower shoulder muscles. And then one shoulder down into the body, let the other rise. Two arms to the balance scale. My head is nice and stable as I So my head's not moving side to side. The whole spine is gently stabilized, but not stiff. Some of the movement works in to the center, but I don't see it from the outside. Roll the shoulders. Reverse. Continuously sinking the weight down, making the legs stable. I'm going to lift the arms up, sinking the shoulders still, extend them back. Loosening the spine, and that lengthening of the lower back as the tailbone drops under the body. Cross and open. And I'm moving at a rate that does not feel rushed, but this morning a little more brisk than I sometimes do it, just to save a little time. But my breath is quite a bit slower than the movement. Breath is slow, even, relaxed, and deep, filling the abdomen. So this feels more like that preparatory posture than it's different. Scoop up both hands, point the fingers in and then down. Leading that spiral movement of the arms from the fingertips. We may feel connecting to the body, trunk and legs. You may feel like there's a subtle lift and descent in the center of the body. Reverse. Still sinking the shoulders. Extending back. Bowing forward. Lead it from the head. Roll down from the top. But don't let the head hang. Or the shoulders stay connected to the back. And then lift the head, lift the chest. And the head leads us up. The head leads us back, keeping the lower spine gently stabilized, at least in the beginning. Gets to the waist rather late, and then the hips, and lift the head, lift the chest. And as we come up, the back's already pretty straight. We don't feel any strain on the low back. Palms turning out. Again, nothing hangs slack at the bottom of that bow. Once more. Turn the head. Work down through the spine. Again, initially the lower body nice and stable, just by virtue of releasing the weight down. Try to hold nothing stiff. Working down a bit through the spine, upper chest and back, mid back, lower ribs, waist, down to the hip bones, and the hip joints just below them. And down all the way through the ankle and the foot. Feel rotation in the ankle and foot, but the whole foot still stays firm on the floor. No toe out. flexing ankle, wrists, trying to really make it specific to the ankle and wrists. So elbow, much knee, hip, toe in, toe out. Okay, no movement from the hip. Sitting comfortably on that back leg. Let that back hip open up. So the knees pointing in the same direction as the toes. And the hips back over the heel. Sole in and sole out. Circle. Reverse. We'll change sides. Flexion first. Toe in and toe out. Sole in and sole out. And circle. Reverse. Hands to the low back. We're going to tuck the tailbone. Stretch the low back out a little bit more. And untuck. Stretch out the front of the abdomen. Backside out a little bit. Without stiffening up. Get a good strong range of motion. Not working too hard. Again, breath is deep and relaxed, and ideally a bit slower than the movement. Drop one hip down and then the other. One hip sink with the other rise. Bend one knee to drop that hip toward the floor. The other leg straightens just slightly.
When you drop your hip, do you drop your shoulder?
I'm always dropping my shoulders.
Wait, do you drop, when you drop one hip, do you drop that same?
Oh, do I drop the shoulder? No, my shoulders, you'll see, are staying pretty level.
So even though shoulders and hips move together?
Right. So when I was moving my upper body, my hips were stable. Now moving my hips, you'll see there's really very little change in the upper body. I'll feel the effect, but I'm not going to see any outward movement. With the windows open, it's a little harder for me to hear. Right, so see the hips are up and down, shoulders are level. When I circle the hips, whole upper body is relatively quiet. In Tai Chi, we generally move the whole body more clearly as a unit, but there's always this kind of stabilization that's going on. And in the foundation exercises, by making that stabilization, leaving one part sort of quiet as another part is moving, really useful as it helps us really assess what's going on here in the hips. Once my shoulders and head start moving around there, it gets very hard to feel what's actually happening specifically in the hip. Trying to take a little wider step, I'm going to sway the hips forward and back. So now I'm back to something more like the basic posture in that area of the low back, pelvis, and hips. So the tailbone's dropping under a little bit. I feel my lower back pressing gently into my palms. And that stays about the same as I sway the hips forward and back. So now the low back is pretty stable. I'll feel something there, right? A subtle change in pressure. It's something that's almost a kind of massaging the muscles. But I'm not going to be changing the pelvic tilt. Right? The feeling of the tailbone being sort of under the body is maintained. Side to side, same thing. So it's got a very different feeling from the last set of hip circles we just did. Big circle. This is a more close approximation of the foundation routine I usually start with my own practice and every class I teach.
So there's a limit to how far you can move without moving the hips also.
Yes, yeah. So a lot of these movements are not very big. And you notice when I do those hip circles, most people default very quickly to their head going around, and then whether they know it or not. I'm trying to keep my head in the center and circle the hips around.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like a pendulum.
Mm-hmm. You're still suspended from the ceiling.
Yeah, my head, while not absolutely fixed in place, it has that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going very far, right? The hips are making a much bigger movement. But most people sort of lose that stability, and their hips and their head are sort of moving opposite to each other, which is okay, but it's not as specific. So I usually, if I'm going to let the head move in a circle, I keep the hips in place.
Mm-hmm. It's a different strap movement.
Yeah. Right. So I do one or the other. One where the hips are fixed in place and the head's carving out a big circle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or the other one where the head's in place and the hips are carving out the big circle.
It's from a higher area. One's higher than the other where you're moving.
Yeah, so both of those are good variations, and I think they're both better than both my hips and my head going around, because that lacks that element of stability. It lacks what we might call the balance of yin and yang. Yin is stable, yang is active, moving, and this is too much of a mishmash.
Okay, so you don't do both, you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Either the hips are fixed and the head goes around, or the head is fixed and the hips go around.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And when you look at the tradition, you see people doing one or the other, and generally not both. Right? So that's something that's really sort of come to us through various lineages and various sets. You don't always see people doing both those variations. They've picked one or the other. But you don't see the sort of mishmash one where you're doing both at the same time.
It feels like you might be off balance if you do both together.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it inherently. It's just less useful because it's less specific.
Okay, but it also, I mean, I got the feeling that I'm leaning more.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, what are we really working when we do this? It's like, there's a big question mark. There's like a lot of little things, and if something's not working quite right, it's a little hard to track down, right? It's like all my little tensions, right, and limitations in the way the joint moves. When I let everything move, it kind of gets hidden, right? It's like, there are problems there, but I can kind of ignore them, and I can kind of sort of squeak around them. But when I keep my head in place and I move my hips, right away I start to go, in this part of the circle, something doesn't feel right. Right? Or if I do it the other way, keeping the hips in place, like there's a place where I can't keep my hips stable, like they fly off, right? Or I can't get a smooth round movement, it catches. Right? So both those versions, one of the things that's better about them, in my opinion, is that they are more specific and they allow us to bring more specific kind of attention, which allows us to get a more specific benefit. Right? When everything's just sort of loosey-goosey, is there some benefit? Probably. It's not very specific. And it doesn't tend to help work to start to resolve some of the challenges we're experiencing. We might not even notice them. Right? If you don't notice what the problem is, very hard to make a change.
Yep. First, make a diagnosis.
Yes. I just finished teaching my big 20-hour weekend at the university, 3 days, and put up with me all day for 3 days in a row. And I told them, if you are touching the patient, you're diagnosing, right? You are also treating. Right? So don't think of it like when you start to palpate their muscles, the soft tissue, or the joints, that somehow you're not treating them. Right? If you're touching them, that's already a treatment. Right? And then when you're squeezing muscles, you're stretching things out and doing all these different techniques, don't think you've stopped diagnosing. Right? Every moment of touch is palpation. You have to feel what is there, what's going on. Is something changing, or am I noticing something I didn't notice before? Right? So we want to do our Qigong, our Tai Chi the same way. We want to notice specifically what's going on all the time so that every moment is a kind of diagnosis. What's really going on in my body? And that can be uncomfortable. Sometimes what's happening in the body is not comfortable. So we want to put our mind somewhere else. At the same time, we don't want to obsess about it. I don't want to think, oh, this feels terrible, right? That's no good. That just becomes a kind of distraction, and that kind of negativity is going to sort of pull me away from doing the movement in a way that is fluid and that encourages the qi to move freely, right? Your mind affects the qi. This is standard thinking in Chinese medicine and Tai Chi, Qigong, these kinds of things. So your mind has to be calm and relaxed, right? And you have to essentially a positive mood, right? You want to cultivate a positive mood while you're practicing, and the practice should help that. But you also want to pursue that, right? That sort of attention that really infiltrates every part of the body and brings back quite specific information. Right? So, for instance, here I am shifting left and right. And so often, the basic weight shift like this, you see on one or both sides, the person's weight starts to roll in on their foot, and the knee drops in. But they don't notice it. And how do I know they don't notice it? It's because they keep doing it. Right? Their face is kind of relaxed or a little blank, you know. Their mind might be off somewhere because this is not such an interesting exercise, except it is if you make it interesting, right? 40 years ago, I probably did not find this exercise very interesting. Maybe the first couple of weeks, right? And then I maybe took it for granted for, 10 years. After 15 years, coming back to these exercises, thinking, oh, I need to figure them out so I can teach them better. And then realizing, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not doing them. If only because I don't have this really precise level of attention that I'm giving every part. Right? So some people are good at sort of relaxing into the wholeness of it, right? It has the whole movement has a feeling. Great, that is definitely part of it. But the precision is part of it too. What's going on with that little toe?
I quoted you. I was at Tai Chi Qigong weekend that I didn't tell you this year because you never were interested, but I was there this weekend and I mentioned your teaching about that fifth toe, keeping your weight on the unweighted leg, keep your mind on that fifth toe to prevent your knee from collapsing. I love that. I think of that and I think of you when I think of that. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you. Yes, exactly. A lot of people can't feel when their knee comes in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But you can feel it when the weight comes off that fifth toe, right? So I think that's easier for people to notice. And that toe goes down, you're exactly right. Then the knee is much more likely to be in the right place. Right? So even how to pay attention, I mean, it's quite a skill that just develops and develops and develops. Right? So I've been doing this, 40 years. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. 40 years. And my ability to pay attention and to feel things and understand what I feel just keeps developing and developing, right? Am I as physically strong as I was, say, 20 years ago? I'm sure I am not, right? Do I have aches and pains, and have I injured my joints by doing various stupid things when I was younger, and even sometimes when I was older? Are all those things going to repair themselves? Well, no. Some kinds of tears, unless there's an intervention, they're not going to go back. No amount of chi is going to, reattach every part of a torn ligament. But I'm so much smarter about the way I practice. And I, in many ways, get so much more out of it. And I wish I had figured it all out 30 years ago.
That's
40 years ago might be asking a little bit much, but I really started figuring it out, more like 15 years ago, like really figuring it out.
You got to reach a certain point before you attain wisdom. That takes
I guess I should say 20. I started really figuring it out 20 years ago. So at the halfway point.
We could say 10,000 hours. We could pick some arbitrary large number. It takes time to get proficient, to get wise. You can't rush that.
It also takes determination.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've met plenty of people who have been practicing for 40 years. And when I ask them about the opening move, right, they come to me for a lesson or this or that, and I ask them about the opening move, they have never thought about it. The fact that you would expend any real effort trying to analyze the commencement movement is to them like a whole new idea, right? So if you haven't dug in that way, then you're not going to see the same kind of change over a period of 20 years or whatever, right? So you have to question yourself. You have to go back and go, what do I really know? And if you're honest, the answer is always close to nothing. Right? Because the universe, knowledge, it's infinite. But however much you know, it is a vanishing fraction. It's almost nothing. Right? So that way, every day you come to practice with this attitude of like, I know something, but the something I know is almost nothing. Okay. Now I'm prepared to practice. So if I do that commencement and I sink the weight down, and I feel that opposite heel pop up. So many little changes in the body, but the right changes. That's the wrong change, right? People lean this way, even more commonly, they lean this way, right? The hip goes out. And it's like, well, even here I can say, well, my little toe's down, must be okay, but it's not, because my hip's out. So when I sink the weight down, my hip stays right over my heel and it doesn't sway to the side. Is there a kind of balance here? Sure. That's why my hip is out. It's because it gives me a kind of balance. But it's not a well-integrated form of balance. It's like big blocks of too much and too little, right? Yin and yang, excess and deficiency. As opposed to, rather than a couple big adjustments, lots of little adjustments. Right? The Chinese sometimes talk about the 100 joints, the 100 just being a symbolic name for many, right? So the body has 100 joints in it. So I make one change, all 100 joints change.
Are your heels together or not?
They started off together, yes.
Oh, they are. Okay.
And as my weight goes down,
your pants covered the heels.
Yeah. Okay. So on the lighter foot,
I don't mean to,
the heel just pops up automatically.
Right.
Boom. Now I let the hips turn as I step out. And that back foot traces a little arc, but it ends up right on the line. Luckily, I'm sort of standing on the line of the road here, so hopefully it's kind of visible, right? So because I let my body turn a little bit, that heel swings back and comes back to the line. And I don't have to micromanage it. Right? All I have to do is maintain the posture, allow for the body to turn a little bit, my heel ends up in the right place. If I don't allow for that turn, the foot always comes forward. If I try to micromanage it, that foot's either going to end up forward or back, or however I'm compensating, right? How I'm sort of overdoing one thing or another. If when I turn, the hips ways out, the foot's not going to be in the right place. Right? So how to keep that basic posture and step out. And a lot of people talk about this as if it's nuance, right? But really it's the core of the thing. It's the very center of the thing. We were talking a little bit last week about Pēng, right? How is it we generate that lift and expansiveness, right? It's the core idea of Tai Chi in terms of techniques, hand techniques or body techniques. There's this basic posture, the foundation, but in terms of the mobilizations, the gestures, right? The first of the gestures, or postures, movements, whatever we want to call them, right, is Pēng, or expanding upward and outward, pushing up, or as usually translated in English, warding off. I'm not crazy about that translation, right? The problem with warding off is it doesn't have a shape to it. It doesn't really suggest a direction except a way. But Pēng always has up in it, right? So it's expanding outward, but upward. So how do we get that feeling in the hand, if we call it a hand method? A hand method is really a body method, because it comes from the whole body. So it comes from how I sink the weight, lead the weight downward, and when the ground pushes back up on me, and it lifts my hands. And if my shoulders come up, then all the lift is coming from my shoulders. Not even the whole shoulder, but just the upper shoulder area. And I try to include my trapezius muscles, my traps, which don't actually help this movement at all. All it does is add unnecessary tension. These muscles are not part of this movement. That's just not what they do. So if I feel this lifting, that's a waste. So the weight's sinking, the hips are sinking, the shoulders are sinking because they feel like they connect to my hips. And as they go down, that lifts the arm like a counterweight. It's even much more interesting than that. That's just a basic mechanical analogy. But it's the way the whole body sort of fills up, right? The feeling of subtly inflating. You feel it right under the skin, and you feel it everywhere, right? In every direction. You can't make that happen, right? There's no, right, particular mental switch to throw to like inflate. And well, until you build it. It's got to feel like it happens for free. Then I let the elbows and knees soften and let the hands sink down. Now the hands get very heavy on the way down, but without pulling me forward. Pēng and on. Push up and press down. In English, press down often gets translated as push, but that's actually just the wrong term. Just on does not mean to push. It means to press or depress. Even at the end here, I still feel some of that expansiveness. The Pēng feeling never leaves. Right? It's a kind of gentle fullness of the body, a sense of subtle inflation. It'll be stronger, more obvious at sometimes, but it never disappears. So even as we do on, which we can see is a complementary movement to that Pēng lift of the hands, there's still a quality of Pēng in the whole body. Again, this may start to sound like subtleties, something, but it's right at the core of the thing. And let's take a little wider step. And I'll shift and turn. Go back to this level hands tracing fish, right? The figure 8 shape is the 2 fish, right? Swimming in the bowl. And here, the movement in the hips and legs just pull, right? Carries the whole upper body with it. Right? So the upper body is very still, and I'm not steering with my head, right? I'm not turning my head to look one way or another. And I'm not reaching with my arms, right? The arms are just flowing along with the body.
Are you making a figure 8 with your arms and your hips?
I'm making a figure 8 with my hips and my arms.
And your arm, yeah.
I am not tracing a figure 8 with my hands.
Yeah.
Right? If I took a piece of chalk and drew a figure 8, that isn't what I'm doing. My hands only make a figure 8 because my hips are creating that figure 8, right? Yeah. So I shift the weight and then I turn. I shift the weight and then I turn. And there's 2 directions we could go. There's the backward sitting version. I turn and then I sit back. And I turn and I sit back. And each time I sit back, the hands feel a little bit like that pressing down. And when I turn, there's a subtle lift, very subtle, but you don't have to see it, right? If somebody else in the room can see it without looking really, really closely, you're exaggerating. It's just like when I turn, the hands just sort of float up. And when I sit back, they sink down. But how much was that? An inch, maybe? I mean, it's really very small. It's what we might call passive range of motion, right? I'm not intentionally moving my arms. They just sort of get moved. And then shift the weight forward and let the hands sink in. So again, that's a small movement. As I push forward, the hands sink down, again, at most an inch maybe. And then they release up a little bit. Turn back and they start to gather in and down. So there's that interesting change between sinking in and releasing up. And that opening flows into the beginning of the turn. And then the hands start to sink again. They sink a little bit more as I shift. So then now the up and down of the hands is not timed in a rigid way with the weight shift and the turning, right? It's sort of like the weight shift and turning that happens from the hips leads, and the arms are following. So the connection there is 100%. But it's not like the hands are down as I'm shifting my weight, and they come up as I turn. And they're down as I shift my weight, and then they come up as I turn. Right? It's not that sort of simplistic. There's a down up as I shift the weight. Turn, they're still coming up a little bit, and then as I finish the turning, they're starting to sink down. And then there's a down up. Again, this is not for me to coordinate my arms mentally. This is for me to try to feel how this kind of wants to happen.
There has to be a delay because we're not fixed.
Yeah, I mean, I was tempted to call it a delay before, but it's not actually a delay. It's not momentum still carrying the hands. What it is that there aren't 2 phases here of movement in the legs. There are 4. So when I was sitting back, I can kind of do 2 phases, right? Shift the weight back, turn.
Right.
Shift the weight back, turn. And I see those 2 phases in the hands. It's sitting back is kind of simpler, which is why I always teach it first. Right, I sit back and the hands are sinking. Seems very clear and close. Turning, it sort of throws my hands out away. So 1, 2, and then to the other side. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah.
1, 2. It doesn't have to be 100% rigid, but it's pretty closely coordinated and it's pretty simple.
It's like the wide receiver always has the advantage over the defensive back because it knows where it's going. The defensive.
When I change directions and push forward, it becomes more complicated automatically. So instead of 2, I'm going to have 1 as I begin to shift the weight, 2 as I finish shifting the weight, 3 as I begin to turn, 4 as I finish turning. All right, so 1, the hands are sinking, 2, the hands are starting to lift, 3, the hands are still lifting, 4, they're starting to sink. Mm-hmm. Then the next weight shift starts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I am sure my old teacher would hate me teaching this way. He liked mechanical explanations for things. He liked to use the words gear and axis to explain the relationship between like hip rotation and spine. Yeah, sort of like a car metaphor.
Yeah.
But this would probably be giving too much away and not letting people develop the feeling on their own. And I understand what he's saying. At the same time, we only have so much time on our hands. And if we are trying to get specific benefits from Tai Chi, we probably want to get down to these sort of fine mechanics and really work on the range of motion in a fairly precise way. There's still a danger, though, that it just becomes a formula, right? Where I am sort of, for a little while, it's fine to count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the danger is that becomes the way I do the exercise. And then I lose something organic, and I stop trying to feel my way through it and just feel how, like, really it's something that just evolves, right? It's not something that's micromanaged. So there's always that fine line, right, where I'm paying too little attention or paying not too much attention, but giving kind of attention that's kind of controlling and limiting. So it's really just there to help us see those sort of 4 phases. I think that's a very useful thing to notice. But we didn't do any actual walking today. But we had some good questions, and hopefully everybody who's watching this either this morning or later online in the playlist finds that useful. And remember, when I'm talking about some point, you can always just keep practicing. You don't have to stop and listen to me. Just try to feel your way through it. So this way, Pēng and An are sort of built into something that looks from the outside just like a horizontal movement, right? It just looks like this horizontal figure 8. And when somebody who doesn't know Tai Chi looks at it from the outside, they say, oh, they're moving their hands around. And maybe they say, oh, it's sort of a figure 8. What they don't see is it's in the hips. And then the other thing they don't see is that there's a little in and out and up and down. Right? So they see the thing that's maybe least important and miss the most important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They see sort of the middle thing. The thing that's in the middle is the hands go in figure 8. But it starts with the hips going in a figure 8. Right? So, like, how is just turning and shifting the weight a figure 8? Well, you may not feel that way initially. But after a while, I think it will. Right? So the beginner doesn't see that that's really what it is, right? And so they think they're supposed to be moving their hands. And then nobody sees the play, right? And if I tell them the hands are going in and out and up and down, then they exaggerate it, right? Then you see people doing this, which is not a bad exercise. It's fine, right? But it's right. The problem is that the hands can end up leading the whole thing, and we want to be leading from here. One of the reasons we want to lead from here is that as we start to find that we're doing a figure eight in the legs here, we start to feel like something is moving in the abdomen, right? That it's not just this movement in the hips. The hips and the legs, in Chinese medicine, that would be called the external body, the outer body. It's the outer structure that you can see moving around. The inner, right? We might think, oh, the joint's deep inside the body. But in Chinese medicine, no, that's like just the deepest part of the exterior. The interior are like the organ cavities, right? The part of the body you cannot see from the outside. So what's happening deep in the abdomen? Well, after a while, I start to feel like, oh, there's some interesting kind of movement. And in the beginning, that's enough. I don't have to be analytical, right? I don't have to search it out too much. I don't want to make too big a deal out of it. But I do want to notice it. That, right, in the beginning, maybe I just feel like there's this subtle change in muscle tension happening throughout the abdomen and the low back. Right? That's fine. That's more on the outside of the body, but that's where the whole thing starts, so that's fine. It gradually starts to feel like it's happening deeper and deeper. And eventually I might even feel like, oh yeah, if there's a figure eight in the hips, is that what I'm feeling in the abdomen? Is there a kind of figure eight too that I feel sort of sliding through the lower back and moving to the front and then moving to the lower back, right? So it's moving front to back and side to side, happening in the abdomen. Now, if you think, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that or I'm supposed to be feeling that, you can make yourself crazy and really just sort of ruin the whole exercise. But at least if the image is in there, after a while, you might say, oh, and one day you might feel it. And then the next day you go, I don't feel that at all anymore. It's gone, whatever. But we don't worry. Right? That's fine. I felt it once. Great. That gives me a little more faith in the exercise. Maybe makes it a little bit more interesting. Right? And then when we start walking, right, this sort of back and forth, side to side walking, initially it's all choreography. There's like all this weird stuff to remember, this weight shifting and this turning. But after a while, you maybe notice, oh, that's kind of like that figure eight stuff we were doing. Right? There's something kind of similar about that. And if I felt a little something happening in the abdomen when I was doing that figure eight, maybe I start to feel something happening in the abdomen when I'm doing that walking. And really, I mean, before I do the figure eight posture, where do I really want to give attention to the abdomen? We go back to these front to back hip swings, right? So again, my head fixed, my hips swinging, right? This is where it's going to be the easiest to feel like, oh yeah, somebody goes to the front, but it goes to the back. And it feels like it's moving right through the center of the body very deeply. And then I do the sides. And I start to feel something moving very deeply side to side, right? It's not a big, strong feeling, right? Initially, it feels quite subtle, but eventually the subtle becomes strong. Right? You could even do diagonals, go from this corner to this corner. But again, my head stays kind of in the middle. Do the other two corners. Those are good because that's where I'm often going to feel like, oh, something's really wrong with my hip on one side. It's like, oh yeah, that's the other side felt pretty good. That one feels a little funky. Right? Then make a big circle. And maybe I start to feel a little sense of fullness or something revolving through the deep abdomen. And it's not mysterious or complicated. It's not esoteric, right? It's just like when my abdomen's forward, it's in the concentration's in the front, and then it's in this corner, then it's on that side, then it's in the back corner. It's just following the movement. Nothing extra I have to do. Just improving my posture, sinking the breath, because breathing down to the abdomen is going to help relax everything through that area, like a gentle massage. And eventually I start to feel something. Oh, if I can feel something there, much more likely that I'll feel something when I do this. And once I start to feel something there, then when I start to do walking, I might start to feel something happening in the abdomen when I'm walking. So I was going to try to finish on time today. Not even close. Well, our new time, it's supposed to be half an hour, but I gave up and just decided it was 40 minutes a while ago. But we're over that now. So hopefully all that's useful. Thank you very much.
Very, thank you.